Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer. For this video, we're going to be going over 9 more tips and tricks for Blacksmith Wukong. We're also going to show you right here to start how to start the quest line to open up the NPC Hub and Blacksmith. And the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go to North Shore of the Bitter Lake. That's the location we're going to be going to because we're going to have to face an NPC there that will start the quest line for the Hub and Blacksmith. If you struggle with a lot of the fights in the game, my recommendation here is to bring in something that can resist shock, thunder damage, etc. because that's mainly what this boss is going to use. I didn't do that and I ended up taking a lot of damage and only took one try, but it would be very helpful in this fight. Yeah, and he doesn't have a lot of HP, so if you have the resistance and stuff, you could probably go right in and beat him up pretty quickly. He's easy to stun and poise break as well. He does jump in the air and have a couple moves like that, but overall, he's not that challenging. So for bosses, I like Pillar Stance for the massive poise damage, but Smash Stance is pretty good too. I like that for regular enemies. We're going to go over that later, what I like using for each one. And right there, of course, we used our Spirit as well to knock him down, and we're going to use a transformation here to get in some damage and not have to worry about getting hurt too much. So when you transform, you're going to go back to your regular health bar once it's over. So get in as many hits as you can. Try to do some combos. If you have the monkey one, you could do the charge attack combos, which ends with a slam down swing, which has a ton of hyper armor. You basically can't get knocked out of it, so that's an excellent way to get in some damage. And of course, we're using the Pluck of Many too. I recommend upgrading that as well as the Freeze. They're two of the best things early on when you get them to upgrade. The Pluck of Many, of course, can cause a lot of damage when they all get in there and get in their hits. And then as far as Freeze go, you can combine the two for even more damage. And the best part about when we beat him and when we start this quest line is having the Blacksmith, but not only having the Blacksmith unlocked, but also having all the NPCs you meet that are helpful that you could use for things like the medicine, the gourd upgrades, etc., all in one spot, and being able to harvest seeds as well, which we're going to go over. So just follow my lead on this fight. If you struggle with it, keep in mind you can definitely take this boss down. The other fight that we're going to go over in the video is a lot more challenging than this one. It's going to be much more of a test than this one. This one's not bad at all. After the fight, talk to him. He's going to ask you for some medicine, and we're going to have to go grab that for him to continue our quest line and open up the hub. And here's where we're going to have to go, right here to the cellar. We're going to talk to this NPC who eventually will end up at the hub, and we're going to need to get some medicine here so that we can bring it back to the other NPC, which is important in continuing this quest line and opening up that area. Keep in mind, this is also the NPC that will give you your buffs and whatnot too, so it's a really important one, but it doesn't matter because soon they're going to be in an easier to access hub, which is going to help us immensely. And once we have our key item, the medicine we got here, we're going to go back to where we were before to talk to the NPC. He'll be a little bit further up, and he is going to take us to that awesome hub and blacksmith area in the game. Also, by the way, this is on PS5, so if anybody's wondering about performance for the game, you can get an idea throughout this video of how it does as well. So far on PS5, other than one boss fight, frame rates, and everything as far as the game goes, it hasn't been bad at all. It's been running pretty well, especially for Unreal Engine 5, which is really hard on console. Alright, so once we have this piece and the scene's over or whatever, we move on from here. We're going to jump into the hub area, and then we're going to go over a couple tips in that area, and then a couple different things that helped me that I kind of just learned that could help you a lot too. Let's go into our next one here. Our next two tips are two achievements for you, trophies if you're on PlayStation, and the first one's going to be, you could harvest here. You could give seeds to that NPC you talk to. He's going to be at the hub area, and then after a while, you can go back and harvest them for crafting materials. You could also go to the blacksmith and upgrade the current armor that you like best. You'll get a trophy for this as well. It's super helpful, and you can also keep the armor, the passive effects you like. Yeah, which is something I really like. I didn't know about this until around Chapter 4, so super helpful. You could start that in Chapter 3. Now we're going to challenge the Tiger boss there because they're going to give you a transformation that's really good. We're going to go over this fight. It's incredibly difficult. So this fight took me longer than any other fight in the game to this point, and I am now on Chapter 5. So that's a big testament to how difficult this fight is. Especially if you're on Chapter 3, this could be really challenging. This boss has a combination of light attacks, delayed attacks, and pretty much flashing around the arena as well. Now, if you upgrade Cloud Step, I believe that's what it's called, that could help you substantially in this fight. It actually could stop you from getting grabbed there and help you with a lot of the situations here. Overall, you can avoid a lot of his attacks. Overall, though, the flashing around, the not taking damage, the combos that he has makes this incredibly difficult. He's also partially immune to freeze. If you freeze him and you hit him with anything, he'll on-freeze. So the concept there is going to be use your spirits. You want to use your spirits when you freeze him, or you want to use a charge attack. Don't use a light attack. It'll on-freeze him immediately, which kind of makes freezing him pointless. And for those of you that didn't think Blacksmith Wukong was challenging enough, or they didn't pick it up because they thought the game would be too easy, I got news for you. There are many bosses in this game so far, this one included, that are as challenging as anything in any Souls game, any Souls-like. Blacksmith Wukong undoubtedly is a very challenging and difficult game. Yeah, this boss took me around an hour or two, and I was on chapter 4 when I went back, so I had decent amount of, I had a decent staff, I had a decent amount of armor, defense, all that stuff, and I still struggled with this boss fight immensely. You could see his attack patterns are absolutely insane. Yeah, you have to be really careful in this fight, so keep an eye out for your dodges, because there's a lot of situations where you're going to end up dodging too early or too late, because he's got these really long combos that mix delayed and light attacks, and they're pretty much in every combo that he has. By the way, I recommend using pretty much everything that you can do charge attack-wise, whether you want to use Pillar Stance, although he can knock you down pretty quickly, or you want to use Smash Stance, either one. Make sure that when you charge, you do land it on him. It does do massive damage, can stun him a little bit, but once again, he also has insanely high poise and doesn't get knocked out of much, which is really incredible. If you struggle with this fight, by the way, you could always go back later on, do this later on. For me, I did this in Chapter 4. If you're on Chapter 3, this could be a very, very difficult fight to the point where it can get incredibly frustrating. No boss took me as long as this boss so far. This was by far the longest for me. And once you take him down, you'll get a transformation, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. We're on to the next tip, though. I want to show something that's really important. Tip number 5, spirit passives. You need to pay attention to these. They could be very helpful. So for the longest time, I wasn't really doing much with these, but they're really helpful. Some of them can increase movement speed. You could have stuff that reduces the cost of the skill. There's a whole bunch of different passive effects for these spirits that could be incredibly helpful and situational. So I recommend looking through all the ones you have, and if you're not using spirits that often, then check out the passive effects and equip the one that you like as far as the passive effects goes and use it for that, because some of them are amazing. The one I currently use is the one that's at the bottom, and for me, that's going to give me additional defense, which is huge. It also does massive damage and poise damage. I really like the Wandering Wight. Significantly increases defense, very helpful. And the next tip we have up here at number 6 is the transformations. The transformations are incredibly helpful. This is the one we unlocked earlier in the video by fighting the blacksmith, the tiger boss, and this one can actually allow you to roll dodge attacks and then follow up and get more damage. So I love this one because of that roll, but also because you can kind of get more damage as you go and build up his special ability. The monkey, by the way, has a really cool ability that does waves, not as good at dodging, but much, much quicker to attack. And they can be situational too, so use these at your own discretion. Change up when you want to change them up, and get to know them. Use them on mobs first, practice them, use their special abilities, learn them well so that when you use them in boss fights, you can make the most of them. Don't just spam them in boss fights without knowing the moveset. They're a little bit complicated to use and learn. A lot of people think they're just basic attacks, but you do have to learn them to make the most out of them. The next tip on here at number 7 is going to be in the settings. So I didn't really like the camera angle, so I finally went through the settings to see what I could change. And apparently auto lock on when attacking and auto target when attacking are naturally set to off, at least on PS5 as far as I know. If you set these to on, every time you attack, you will auto lock on an enemy and the camera will pan with you. And this is really helpful, especially for mobs. This is huge for. Bosses, it doesn't change as much, but overall, when you're facing mobs, sometimes the camera works against you. I was finding a problem with that, for me at least, on PS5. So changing to this was cool, because when you start to attack, you auto-lock on to the enemy, and then the camera's going to pan around and work with you throughout the fight. Really helpful. Something so simple that I didn't know. I went into settings and tried to see what I could do. I'm sure people have found this by now because they were probably having a hard time with the camera as well. But for me, I didn't find this until later. And if you're just starting or you didn't know about this, try it out and see if you end up liking this fighting style using the camera auto lock on and then the pan around. And tip number 8 is jumping combos. I didn't use these a lot early on either. Later on, I kind of figured out what to do with them, and they're excellent, especially again for mobs, because you could stay a distance away from the enemy that you're facing, especially if they're intimidating, and get in some cool combos. And on PS5, you would jump and hit square or jump and hit triangle. Either one, you're going to get a charged or a light attack jumping, and you can mix this in with a whole bunch of different things. Here, we're going to use a basic charge attack, and then we're going to combo in some jump attacks, regular hits, etc. And it works really well. It keeps your distance from the enemy too, which is really helpful. And you can go in and fight towards the end when they have less HP for an easier time. And as far as the jumping combos go, definitely check these out. They can help you for a significantly easier time. Super helpful there. At number 9, the tip we have is upgrade Pillar first and Smash second. So Pillar is amazing for bosses. It does a lot of stance damage to them. It puts you up high. Eventually you can heal on it, which is amazing. It's super helpful. But for mobs, I find Smash stance better, and it's a lot more convenient for me to use against them and take them down. And yeah, Pillar Stance can still do work on mobs, no question about it, but if you run around with the charge attack, you could charge it as you're running, something you can't do with Pillar Stance. Much more helpful for mobs because you could hold it, charge it, etc. Whereas Pillar Stance, what we're using now, we just showed Smash Stance before, you have to pretty much have it charged already or stand there and go up with the pillar and then use it from there. The thing about the pillar, though, is as you take damage and stuff and as you use it, it's going to bring your stamina down relatively fast, so it's hard to get to that third charge for a lot of situations. And thanks for watching this one. I appreciate everybody tuning in for my 9 new tips and tricks for Blacksmith Wukong, as well as to where to find the Blacksmith and NPC Hub. I hope that's incredibly helpful. If you want to see more Blacksmith Wukong content, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Honestly, can't wait to do more for this. After I get to the end game, which will probably be towards the end of this week, I'll start working on some builds for Blacksmith Wukong as well. It's a little bit limited, but there's probably some cool stuff I could do. Can't wait for that, and I'll catch everyone in the next video.